Well, good morning and welcome to today's news conference releasing TRIP's report on the condition of Michigan's transportation system. I'm Rocky Moretti. I'm the Director of Policy and Research with TRIP. Moretti is spelled M-O-R-E-T-T-I. And we'll take a look at our report shortly. In terms of the format of today's news conference, I'll give my comments. We'll then hear from Rob Coppersmith, who's Executive Vice President of the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association. We'll then hear from Ed Niola, the Chief Deputy and Legislative Director of the County Road Association of Michigan, who will comment on the report that we're releasing. Well, then at that point, we'll open it up for questions. Reporters through the chat function or the raise hand function can indicate to my colleague, Carolyn Kelly, that they have a question. At that point, you'll be elevated to the panel itself so that you can ask questions or potentially any follow-up questions you might have and just direct them to whichever of the speakers you'd like to hear from. TRIP is a transportation nonprofit research organization supported by a coalition of manufacturing, insurance, construction, labor, and engineering organizations. And they look to us as advocates for a well-maintained, safe, and efficient transportation system to put out reports looking at the condition and the performance of our nation's transportation system. The report we're releasing today, Keeping Michigan Mobile, is based on the latest data from the Michigan Department of Transportation, as well as from the U.S. Department of Transportation, including the Federal Highway Administration and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. During my initial comments, because we have data for numerous urban areas across the state, I'll also include the latest data for the Detroit, Grand Rapids, and Lansing area. And then for any journalists that are also looking for data for additional urban areas, during the question and answer period, either you can go ahead and ask to be asked the question, or just indicate in the chat section that there's additional urban areas that you would like the data specific for those regions, that I'll go ahead and give those as well. Now to the key findings of the report. The TRIP report looks at basically the recent increase in both state and federal funding in Michigan for its transportation system, but notes that the state still faces an annual $3.9 billion gap in funding needed to maintain and make needed improvements to its roads and bridges. The report also notes that while there was a significant drop in vehicle miles of travel in Michigan due to the COVID pandemic, by last year, vehicle travel in Michigan had returned to within 3% of vehicle travel in 2019. The report notes that the state of Michigan increased its fuel tax in 2027 to 26 cents per gallon of fuel, and that increased annually investment in the state's roads and bridges by $347 million annually. We also note in 2019, the Rebuilding Michigan program provided $3.5 billion in one-time bonding authority, which also allowed the state to increase its investment in roads and bridges. And then finally, in 2021, Congress passed the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and that increased funding by about 40% in Michigan. Unfortunately, what we've seen since then in 2022 and 2023, we've seen a 43% increase in inflation in the cost of highway construction and repairs. That's a federal measurement that looks at the cost of labor and materials. And so, unfortunately, the significant increase in construction inflation has really diminished the ability of these additional funds to address the state's transportation challenges. In 2023, the Growing Michigan Together Council provided a report to Governor Whitmer and the legislature and pointed out that annually Michigan is facing a $3.9 billion gap in needed funding to make needed repairs to the state's roads and bridges and highways. TRIP took a look at what is the impact of the public of roads that are oftentimes have pavements in poor condition, of urban roadways that are often congested, and also of serious and fatal traffic crashes in which the lack of adequate roadway safety features were a contributing factor. TRIP estimates that the cost of roads in poor condition that are congested and lack desirable safety features to the public in Michigan is $17 billion annually. The TRIP report estimates that the cost to Detroit area motorists of poor roads, roads that are congested, and also roads that lack adequate safety features is $3,005 annually. The TRIP report finds that in the Grand Rapids area, the cost of roads that are in poor condition, congested, and lacking adequate roadway safety features is $2,297 annually. The TRIP report estimates that the cost to motorists in the Lansing area of roads in rough condition, roads that are congested and lacking adequate safety features is $1,861 annually. The report also looked at the latest pavement conditions across the state and found that 21% of major roadways in Michigan have pavements in poor condition and 19% in mediocre condition. In the Detroit area, the report finds that 53% of major roads have pavement in poor condition and 17% are rated in mediocre condition. The report found that 38% of major roadways in the Grand Rapids area are rated in poor condition and another 17% are rated in mediocre condition. In the Lansing area, the report finds that 40% of major roads are rated in poor condition and another 16% are rated in mediocre condition. The report also looked at the condition of Michigan's bridges. Any bridge in Michigan more than 20 feet in length, based on federal regulations, has to be inspected at least every 2 years. And the report found that 11% of Michigan's bridges are rated in poor condition and 54% are rated in fair condition. The TRIP report found that in the Detroit area, 10% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition and 51% are rated in mediocre condition. In the Grand Rapids area, the report finds that 6% of bridges are rated in poor condition and 55% are rated in fair condition. In the Lansing area, the report finds that 13% of bridges are rated in poor condition and 65 are rated in mediocre condition. The report also took a look at traffic congestion. Certainly, since COVID, what we've seen is traffic congestion has come back somewhat different. We're seeing less traffic congestion in the morning. The evening rush hours have returned almost to normal. And we're actually seeing increased travel around midday as people take advantage of more flexibility in how they work and where they work. And we're actually seeing on Saturdays, traffic congestion oftentimes rises to the similar level as we see on Mondays. So we really see a different type of traffic congestion post-COVID. In the Detroit area, TRIP estimates that the average motorist is spending an additional 63 hours annually stuck in traffic and wasting 24 gallons of fuel due to traffic congestion. The report found that in the Grand Rapids area, the average motorist is spending an additional 42 hours annually stuck in traffic and wasting an additional 16 gallons of fuel due to traffic congestion. In the Lansing area, TRIP estimates that the average area motorist is spending an additional 16 hours annually stuck in traffic and wasting 6 gallons of fuel due to traffic congestion. The report also looks at traffic safety, and unfortunately what we've seen across the country has been an increase in traffic fatalities since pre-COVID. In Michigan, traffic fatalities from 2019 to 2023 increased by 6% from 985 to 1,040. And the report notes that over the last 5 years, 18% of traffic fatalities in Michigan are pedestrian and bicyclists. So certainly traffic safety impacts all people in Michigan, whether you're a motorist, a pedestrian, or a bicyclist. The report found that from 2018 to 2022, an average of 374 people were killed in traffic crashes in the Detroit area. The report found that from 2018 to 2022, an average of 103 people were killed annually in traffic crashes in the Grand Rapids area. The report found that from 2018 to 2022, an average of 46 people were killed annually in traffic crashes in the Lansing area. There's a national effort called the Safe Systems Approach from the U.S. Department of Transportation that looks at a broad, holistic approach to traffic safety. It starts with the public themselves to ensure that as motorists that they're driving safely within the speed limit and not are impaired. It also falls on pedestrian and bicyclists to make sure that they're making good decisions as they travel across the state. But it's also critical that we invest in improving roadway safety. Again, for motorists, pedestrian, and bicyclists, we know that when transportation agencies have adequate resources to make those needed roadway safety improvements, that we can see a significant benefit in terms of keeping people safer. Finally, the report notes how critical the transportation system is to freight movement in Michigan. Each year, $756 billion of goods are moved annually. And looking at an inflation-adjusted estimate, it's anticipated that the value of freight moved by 2050 in Michigan will increase by 80% as we see continued increase in the need for freight movement, which is obviously critical to the performance of Michigan's transportation or Michigan's economy. So I'll conclude there, and I'll ask Rob and then Ed to give some comments, and then we'll open it up for questions. Rob?
Thanks, Rocky. Again, I'm Rob Coppersmith with the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association. We represent contractors and engineering firms statewide that work on our transportation system. Very proud to do that over the last 30 years, and very proud of TRIP's body of work over the decades. They do a tremendous job of diving into the issue, and in this particular point, report, Keeping Michigan Mobile, I think really humanizes the situation that we're in to the average traveler. So I feel like it's a little unique compared to some of their other work. But I'm going to make my math teacher really proud of me today because, it wasn't my strong suit back in high school. But if we're wasting $17 billion annually across our state due to fixing cars and wasting gas sitting on highways and lost productivity and that type of thing. And then the Growing Michigan Together Council, which I served on, identified 3.9. So I'm going to round up to 4 even. So 17 minus 4 equals $13 billion a year we could potentially be saving in Michigan. So I would gladly spend $4 billion to save 13 if my numbers add up correctly. But I think what it really does is it puts it in this report puts it into the consumer's hands to see that everyone's struggling to buy groceries and other things like that in this highly inflationary period we've been going through. And these costs to the consumer are very hard to add up, but they're real costs. And I hope that this turns a light bulb on for people that understand that Michigan has a funding problem. Our governor's been doing a great job with their bonding program and the federal dollars that we've been getting, but those dry up shortly. And then we'll be on a slippery slope back to the path that we started on. And so it's critical that we do find these long-term funding solutions to keep us going forward. My work on the Growing Michigan Together Council, where we did identify the $3.9 billion shortfall, it was just part of a larger picture. And in the picture in Michigan is that, we understand that good infrastructure is the backbone of any good economy in any great state. And we want Michigan to be very competitive in this area. And the way to be competitive is to have a good road system that trickles right down into the local markets so that we have beautiful neighborhoods and great working roads and the safety features that do save lives. So MITA is excited to see this information. We hope that it motivates people within the legislature to recognize this shortfall that's coming. And we want to maintain the momentum, the great momentum we've had over the last several years that is moving us forward. But again, we can slide back quickly if we don't do something to address this gap. And I thank you for your time, Rocky. I thank you for your effort, and all of you at TRIP, and available for questions after this.
Thank you, Rob. Ed?
Good morning. I'm Ed Noyola. I'm the Chief Deputy and Legislative Director for the County Road Association of Michigan. I've been here probably a little over 20 years. I also have a couple of decades with the Department of Transportation. So I've been around the block a few hundred times, let's put it that way. Thank you to TRIP for having us here today and for sharing this important information within this report regarding the state's condition, infrastructure condition. All 83 county road agencies are members of the County Road Association, representing a unified voice in a safe and efficient county infrastructure system in Michigan. Collectively, Michigan county road agencies manage 75% of the state's roads, including 90,000 miles of roads and over 7,500 bridges, which is the nation's fourth largest local road system. County road agencies also maintain the state's highway system in 63 counties. For those of you not familiar, those are the I, US, and M highway routes in Michigan. Like Rob said, Michiganders are witnessing the impact of literally decades of underinvestment in our infrastructure. And unless our leaders act now for a long-term solution, equitable and sustainable investment and an equitable and sustainable investment plan. Infrastructure conditions are only going to worsen and the cost is going to increase. Out of the 11,300 bridges across the state of Michigan, 11% are in poor condition or structurally deficient. This is the nation's 8th highest. This is not the top 10 list you want to be on. When bridges are in poor condition, it possesses a safety and risk to drivers, as witnessed in other state bridge failures. Most bridges are designed for 50 years before a major overhaul or replacement, but in Michigan, 41% of the state's bridges are over 50 years old. Our infrastructure is the backbone of the economy. We cannot continue to allow Michigan's critical road and bridge needs to fall into poor condition. The problem is not going away. Michigan residents and visitors that travel our roads and bridges every day to work, to the grocery store, to home, to explore all of the great features of the state of Michigan we offer. Last year, motorists around the state traveled nearly 100 billion miles on our roads and crossing our bridges. If Michigan wants to be the state of growing population and increased business investment, we cannot be complacent with the current condition of our infrastructure. And we must invest in our transportation system to ensure a safe and reliable system for generations to come. I want to thank Rocky for his great report. Obviously, there's a lot of detail in there, but we agree that this is a situation that needs to be resolved, and the sooner the better. As far as we're concerned, we're starting to see some deterioration or some lack of roads being improved because of the funding. But that being said, I'm more than willing to answer any questions. And thank you again, Rocky, Rob.
Thank you, Ed. And now I'll ask Carolyn to explain how we'll handle questions.
Thanks, Rocky. My name's Carolyn Kelly. I'm TRIP's Director of Communication and Research. So at this point, now that we've heard from Rocky and Ed and Rob, we'll be able to open things up to a brief Q&A session. So as Rocky mentioned earlier, you can either use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen to indicate that you'd like to ask a question of the panelists, or you can also submit your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box that you also see below. So again, once you raise your hand or indicate that you have a question, I'll be able to promote you to a panelist. So we'll be able to see and to hear you ask your question. If you'd prefer, if you want to submit your question to the chat box, I'm happy to read that as well if you'd rather not be part of the panel for your question. So while we wait for some questions to come in, I'll also note that we'll have a recording of this news conference up on our website by about 11 o'clock. And we'll also have the report as well as the news releases available on our website. In fact, they're there right now, and you'll be able to get all the materials on the TRIP website. So I see a question from Ellie in Traverse City. Rocky, Ellie would like the data for the Traverse City area, if you're able to provide that quickly.
Okay, give me 1 second. I thought I had that in my notes, and that was the one urban. I didn't get that. So just give me 1 second to find that.
Sure. And if there are any other questions in the meantime, while Rocky's
Yeah,
pulling up
okay.
the
I've
Traverse
called
City
that
data.
up. Yeah.
Okay, go right ahead.
The report finds that in the Traverse, let me just start over. The report finds in the Traverse City area that the cost to motorists of driving on rough roads, on roads that are congested, or roads that lack adequate safety features is $1,787 annually. Those costs include the impact of driving on rough roads, which are beating up their vehicles, lost time due to traffic congestion, and the economic cost of serious or fatal traffic crashes. In the Traverse City area, the report finds that 11% of roadways have pavements in poor condition and 10% are rated in mediocre condition. The report also finds that in the Traverse City area, 9% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition. The report finds that in the Traverse City area, 31%, it finds that in the Traverse City area, the average motorist is spending an additional 31 hours annually stuck in traffic. The report also found that over the last 5 years in the Traverse City area, there's been an annual average of 10 traffic fatalities annually in the region.
Thanks, Rocky. I don't see any other questions or hands raised at the moment. I'll also note that Rocky and myself are both available through the day and through the week if you have any additional questions, or if you'd like a video interview that might cover some of the other urban areas. And we'll also, again, have the recording of this news conference up. I also see a question from Elena. Elena, I will elevate you to a panelist, and then you'll be able to ask your question live of our panelists. So Elena, go ahead with your question. I think you'll need to unmute your line first. There you go.
Hi there, Elena with Gongwer. I was just wondering, this report finds that our current infrastructure is lacking in a lot of areas. How do we confront the need for investment in current infrastructure with the way transportation is changing, like EVs?
You're talking in terms of, there's a challenge in the future, certainly with funding sustainability, and certainly as we see the transition to electric vehicles, there'll be a challenge that whether the states are imposing adequate taxes on those electric vehicles to compensate it. The other significant and really probably over the next decade, the greater concern is that certainly we're moving to more efficient vehicles, fuel efficient. And so that's certainly a positive in terms of fuel use, but obviously that will take a bite out of fuel tax resources. And most states are finding that their fuel tax revenue is flatlining as we move to more efficient vehicles. So certainly in terms of funding sustainability, that is going to be a challenge moving forward. Rob, you may have some comments on that as well, or Ed?
No, I think you're very accurate on that. I think the lost revenue portion of the $3.9 billion PSC report that the Growing Michigan Together Council talks about addresses that area as far as it's a declining revenue source. And a lot of people just see the price of gas and don't realize that it is a declining revenue source because it impacts your wallet every time you pull up to the pump. But currently in Michigan too, EVs have a little bit more advanced registration fees. So Michigan may be in a better position than other states as far as collecting revenues on that, but there certainly will be a shortfall at some point County Road Association has done a great deal of work on that issue, but the long and short of it is I think the larger discussion that's going to happen nationally is how do we collect adequate revenues in a declining situation that road usage charges and other things like that are certainly being investigated as potential sources for that. But the reality is that in Michigan, I think that those discussions are going to take years to iron out as far as how you might change how our nation's roads are funded. And so we have to figure out exactly what we need to do in Michigan to catch up and maintain our momentum in this area. So we certainly will have to have some gap type measures to get us keep us on the right trajectory.
Rob is absolutely correct. If you look at the electric vehicles, they are getting a little bit of a they get a surcharge added onto their registration, but there's one class of hybrid, which is the most popular type of hybrid that doesn't pay any additional cost in registration fees as the other category of electric vehicles and other hybrids. So we do have a problem there. But I think the bigger problem right now is if you look, and I don't mean it as a problem, but the high efficiency vehicles, they're the ones that are putting a bigger dent into the lost revenue that we're seeing as opposed to previous years. So we need to look at that. We also have looked at, we had a study done to look at electric vehicles and what are our options in dealing with that as the increase of vehicles, electric vehicles and hybrids grows, and it's continuing to grow in Michigan. So, we need to look at something right now, the sooner the better, as I said earlier, in order to try to slow this problem down of funding. We as the Department of Transportation are seeing money coming in, additional money coming in, but the purchasing power is going down. So we're doing less work on our road system, on our local road system, just like the Department of Transportation and the cities and villages.
Thank you very much.
At this point, I don't see any other open questions.
Okay, well, I think with that, then again, I'll thank Rob and Ed for taking time out of their days to comment on our report. And I certainly thank everyone who tuned in for today's call. And certainly throughout the day, myself and Carolyn will be available to any media who want to have follow-up questions or want to set up a Zoom interview. We'll be happy to entertain that. Again, thank you, and hope everyone has a safe day.
Thank you, Rocky.
Thank you.
Carolyn, thank you.